Arc Raiders has changed a lot during development. For example, Rocketeers used to be called a Hammer Judge, and the Photoelectric Cloak was once called a Sonic Lure. I watched an entire 3-part documentary on the development of Arc Raiders, and so today I'm going to show you everything interesting that I found. Starting off with the largest change of all is the actual gameplay itself. Arc Raiders was originally built as a strictly co-op PvE experience where the player's only focus was on arcs. The gameplay looked very different from what we know today. Players could choose between different heroes that all had special abilities, kind of functioning like predetermined classes. When the game was first revealed in 2021, we saw some of these characters in action, many of whom become the characters that we greet in Speranza now when taking on quests or trading items. During this reveal trailer, we get to see multiple shots of both Lance and Celeste topside fighting arcs, showing them as once playable characters that we could have controlled. All of this was supposed to be a free-to-play experience too. They took this plan pretty far into development, but during a beta test they started to notice that the PvE gameplay wasn't providing enough variety to really hook the players wanting more, and they weren't totally sold on what they've created so far. The team reached a point where they were given a 6-month deadline to complete the game, and from there they would have 3 choices. Now this was all going on in about 2021-2022, because during that reveal trailer at the end we actually see that the game was supposed to release in 2022. Now these 3 choices they had were to either release an unpolished game that did look entirely different from the one we have today. They could cancel the project and just create something new, or they could delay the release of the game and pivot to add the element of PvP. Now the developers loved the world they had built and the lore and stories that came with it, so they chose to pivot, keeping the world of Arc alive while changing the core gameplay loop. Something interesting that was able to make this delay possible is the fact that the studio had another game they planned to release after Arc Raiders by the name of The Finals. So the studio swapped the releases of these 2 titles in order to buy Arc Raiders more time. The team calls this time period, quote, the reset, and one of the other things that was changed during this time is the size of the maps. Originally, games would take place on much larger maps where they said some rounds you could spend 10 minutes running before even fighting the larger arcs on the map, which goes against one of their core goals, which was to make a consistent gameplay experience that every round was going to be fun and action-packed. During testing, they realized that the most fun gameplay came from the builds and the maps that they made that were more compact in size. So by downsizing the maps and adding in a new element of PvP, this created an ultimately unlimited number of outcomes for each game session, keeping the game fresh and exciting every time. One little interesting fact about the maps is that every single map except for Buried City was made during the PvE stage of the game, and they all had to be adapted to this new playstyle, redesigned with PvP in mind. What this looks like is changing certain lines of sight that were already in the game or fixing areas that were previously dead ends, stuff like that. So Buried City was the only map designed from the ground up for PvP, so that's something that was able to take shape behind the scenes. When the game was built to be a co-op experience, the player's relationship with arcs looked very different from now. Early on, players were able to absolutely dominate arcs, both large and small. For example, you used to be able to get these rocket boots that could launch you up into the sky to shoot rounds off, propel you forward, or even jump you up on top of a large arc to get to some vulnerable areas. Combining this type of equipment with the help of up to 39 other players, and each round was filled with high-flying action, but there wasn't really the systems or progressions to keep players interested after experiencing these highly action-packed moments. During this time called the reset, this relationship between players and arcs took an absolute total 180. The game build went from a purely action title to a more slowed down, exploration-focused game where the players would end up fearing the arcs. This is one of the best features of Arc Raiders to me, the dynamic between PvP and the potential for other players to target you, while also having the threat of very dangerous arcs at every corner makes for a perfectly challenging game session. And the arcs themselves in both design and function have changed a lot throughout development too. As I showed you earlier, Rocketeers used to be called the Hammer Judge, and Hornets used to look like this. Here, their armor plating used to have a more triangular, sharp design, as opposed to the more rounded and covered armor that we see today. Another enemy design that was changed is the Snitch. Here you can see a Snitch that's more in the shape of a ball as opposed to the cone-shaped Snitch that we see today. I was also able to find this clip of an enemy called a Troll that looks a lot like an Arc Surveyor but almost operates like a fireball. It has the size and look of an Arc Surveyor, but it has opening doors to shoot at players kind of like the fireball does. So whatever happened to the Troll? Now, I was also able to find a shredder roaming on Spaceport, so these were at one point meant to appear on maps other than just Stellamontis. Throughout this whole documentary, I was able to find multiple different enemies that we have yet to encounter, so I really wonder how many of these will be making a return or that have been permanently scrapped. I was also able to find many changes to our equipment and characters. In one scene, we can see this massive tool on the back of a raider, but we don't get to see it in action, so what do you think this could be? The player does have two weapons equipped, being a rocket launcher and a rifle, so I'm guessing this item isn't another weapon. If I had to guess, I would say that maybe you could place this down like a beacon to heal yourself and teammates, or maybe it could be like a photoelectric cloak you could place down too that emits a small arc shield around you. That being said, we do see multiple instances of different types of large rocket launchers. In the final game, we get the hole cracker, but in the earlier builds, it looks like you had access to launchers that resemble more of like an RPG or a bazooka. In another scene, we see a weapon that looks like a Showstopper launcher. It's a rocket that temporarily neutralizes arcs, which I think is a cool idea we could still see added into the game later on. Another cool weapon that we see in an earlier build that hasn't made it into the final game is this gun here. To me, it almost looks like a futuristic Chris Vector, which I think would be super cool to have in game and would probably be able to compete with the Bobcat and the Stitcher. Maybe it could be a blue tiered SMG since we don't have one of those yet, and honestly now that I'm saying it, I think that'd be really cool to see added in down the road. In this exact same clip, we can also see something as simple as this backpack, which was likely altered into the bag that we have in game now that looks like this. It's got a pretty similar design, but the position of the light on the back has been moved and it's been slightly morphed to be a little less wide and a little more tall. In another shot, we see this zipline launcher. It's a machine that's able to shoot out a zipline across the map, and while it may seem like a cool new idea, it's really not that different from the zipline stations that we have now throughout the maps, just a little bit more over the top. I do wonder if we'll ever see these reintroduced on a new map, or if they've just canned the idea to go with the smaller profile ziplines that we have set up now. I was also able to find this clip of a raider using their quick slot menu. So first off, we'll notice the old UI that they used to use, but we can also see that the player has a Wolfpack. There is something kind of off here though. The preview for the item doesn't exactly look like a Wolfpack, so either the design of the Wolfpack used to look like that, or it was just a placeholder for the grenade in the quick slot menu. In the same scene, we also see an item called the Armor Patcher. It seems like this is just an alternate version of the shield rechargers that we have today, so maybe we could see this introduced down the road as a new method of healing. In these shots here, you can see one of the older UI designs for our inventory. It used to look like this, where our guns were front and center on the top, and all of our items were kind of there in the middle on the bottom. We also got a glimpse at some of the old shop UI as well. So here we can see a developer looking at Apollo's shop with a few differences found in the arrangement, size, and locations of the items on screen. Now, do you know of any changes that I haven't mentioned yet? Let me know down below because there is a ton of information and I tried to include everything that I found interesting and that I was able to find during this documentary. I do hope this video was able to teach you at least one new thing, and as always, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you in the next one.